This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglin.
Even though they were shooting against our archers, I still want them to be able to, have the best day of their life, too.
So who's that? Tom Patterson, head coach with the state, national, and defending world champion Trigg County Arrowcats archery team. We'll get his thoughts on a program that has helped set the standard for the sport from day one. Also, we'll talk with the head man of NASP Archery, the National Archery in the Schools program, Roy Grimes, as the World Championship approaches. Next on Kentucky Afield Radio.
Swimming has taken me around the world.
Olympic swimming gold medalist Rachel Comazar.
It's a thrill to swim for your country, but it's another to swim for your life. In a boating accident, that's what happens. It can happen to you. You could be hurt, dazed, unconscious. Being a good swimmer isn't good enough. When fun turns frantic, trust me, your life jacket is as good as gold.
Kentucky Fish and Wildlife reminds you, your life jacket's got your back and the backing of the best swimmers everywhere.
At the absolute worst, it was a little white lie.
A little white lie.
After all, when it hit the line, it felt like a 15-pounder. It doesn't matter what the scale says. So it might be an ever so slight deviation from the truth.
Sometimes in fishing, the truth is hard to catch.
Maybe just a stretch.
But the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife reminds you, fishing isn't about math. It's about fun.
And fudging a little if you need to.
Kentucky Fishing.
It'll make a liar out of you.
This is Kentucky Afield Radio, and my name is Charlie Baglin. Archery is a popular sport in the state of Kentucky if you shoot at conservation camp, if you shoot in deer season, or if you shoot on your local elementary, middle, or high school team. A lot of people are involved in archery in this state. Among those include the Trigg County Arrowcats. And their head coach, Tom Patterson, joins me after a very, very successful year. So how is it you became the coach of the very best team in the nation?
Actually, through my children. I had some friends that actually coached the archery team. My son got involved first, and he actually got to shoot in the Graham Coalfield era and was on the team with Graham for 1 year. And after that, my oldest daughter got involved in the program, and she shot, and then my youngest daughter fell right in there, and she started shooting too. After, my son had gotten and graduated out of school, a lot of the people knew that I'd shot, competitively and stuff like that, and asked if I'd be interested in coaching. Opportunity was there, and I went ahead and took it. I had helped some other people in the past. I knew quite a bit about archery, and I shot for quite a few years, so it kind of fell right in line with a passion that I already had, and then I was actually going to spend a lot of time with my kids, and it was a win-win situation. Talk
a minute about where you shot competitively.
I primarily shot IBO 3D. I did shoot a lot of NFAA indoors. That was back in the 86 range, 86 to 90.
So you come at it legitimately. You weren't just some dad who said, hey, we need a coach. You're a competitive shooter, and you know exactly what these kids are facing every time they step on that shooting line.
Yeah, I've stood up there on a stake, and I had, an IBO is not like the ASAs these days. You may have 40, 50 people behind you, waiting to shoot, and you're standing in front of 40 or 50 people shooting at a 60-yard flat target in the rain or in the wind, and a lot of conditions there that you have to tune it all out. So, yeah, as far as being familiar with standing in front of people and shooting, yeah, I've done a lot of it, enjoyed it. I know a lot of the anxieties, the highlights of it, and the disappointments of it, too. So.
Trigg County, for anyone who does not know, is in far western Kentucky and touches which lake down there?
Barkley.
And the Arrowcats is the team that shoots the National Archery in the Schools program, and you have done very well under your leadership and very well since the dawn of this sport in Kentucky. You mentioned earlier on the Graham Coalfield era. Do you want to explain who Graham Coalfield is or was at the time?
Graham is probably the youngest person that has actually been inducted into the NASP Hall of Fame. He actually is the only, that I know of, 4-time straight national title holder and 2-time national champion. He also holds the highest score ever shot. It's been tied in the past few years, and this was done back in, I think it was 2003, or it was when he did this. He shot a 298 with 29 X's. So he hit one of his arrows and kicked into an 8.
29 X's.
It's the scoring system that we use in the NASP program. You get 30 scoreable arrows. You got a possibility of 300 points. To have the perfect X count, there's a little over an inch circle in the middle that has an X in it. That's your X, and then you've got a larger diameter, which is your tens. And, of course, each ring going out in an even spaced distance is a point value, which decreases as you go down further away from the center. He shot 29 out of 30 arrows in the size of a 50-cent piece.
The way the National Archery in the Schools program format is, you shoot 5 arrows, go get them, 5 more, and then you change distances. So he would put 5. I was wondering, can you even fit 5 arrows in that, because you have another archer on that same target with you who's also shooting, and you hope that they're not putting arrows right there in that same 50-cent piece circle, because that leaves less room for you.
That is correct. And when you get to that level of performance, you start placing arrows. And Graham Cofield was one of the best at that, as far as shooting 2 on the top of the X, then 2 lower center, and then in between those 4 arrows, he just shot, placing an arrow between them. And that's managing those arrows in the center of that bullseye is just incredible to watch that young man shoot. You
weren't the coach, though, at the time. He'll get that from your predecessor.
Correct. And then actually one of them was his mother, Miss Lynn Cofield, an awesome lady. And that's where, the basis of our program comes from. It's just like when we talk about, and I preach with the kids, and coach them and stuff, and say, you have to be on a solid rock and not sinking sand. And that's where our foundation came from, and is coming from, is the Cofields and the Tom Malmers and the Tina Davises that started the program back in 2001, 2002 when it all began, and its conception and stuff. That's where our core solid rock foundation comes from.
It's very difficult to talk about Trigg County Archery without a mention of the Cofield brothers, Graham and Grady, because they were certainly two that helped establish the standard for archery in this state, if not the nation. Coach Patterson, you have had a very successful year. You correct me when I leave something out. I know that your high school team is the national champion this year as we speak. You are the champion for elementary, middle, and high school for the state, and you are the defending champion worldwide of high school teams. Am I right so far?
Correct. This year has been phenomenal. Last year was the same way. We set a bunch of records last year in everything that we shot. We had set goals and all achievable goals, and even though we set marks high last year, all the groups said, yeah, we can do this, and they just kept on and working hard, and we broke every record, even up to this last one. We was a little disappointed at our performance as far as gold-wise, because they had set a gold at 34.65, which is, is really unheard of, anything over 34.50. So they fell short of it, but they still improved by 5 arrows because they shot 5 X's better than we shot at state, which was 34.53, which is, a phenomenal score.
We ought to take a moment to explain exactly what that means. But I know that if you have a team of archers, each individual archer could shoot a maximum of 300. Just like bowling, if you shoot a perfect game, then you have scored a 300. So you take your 12 best scores, the top 4 girls, the top 4 boys, and then the next 4 top scores to follow those. So you have 12, and 12 times 300 would be 3,600. And so now we're approaching those scores you were talking about, 3,400.
34.53, and the X count was higher on our second one. Both of them were 34.53s, which is actually a 288 average for 12 participants out of that team.
The best archers in the nation have formed an all-American team. Their team score is 35.52. That means you are less than 100 points away, or about 8 points an archer off. Trigg County alone is within 8 points an archer of being as good as the all-American team.
Yeah.
Did you know that? Did you do that math?
Yeah, and actually we've already talked about our goals for next year, and we're actually going to try to cut that in half by next year.
You want to get up over 3,500 this coming season.
That's by the end this time next year. If the archers on that team perform and do what we're planning on doing, they should break the 3,500 mark. That's our goal for next year.
Coach, before we go to break, let's congratulate other state winners in the individual categories. Overall male at 297, Jericho Vanoy from Hopkins County Central High School, with a tie for runners-up. Billy Holiday out of Prestonsburg High School and Blake Botner and Corbin Middle. On the girls' side of things, the overall winner from Stuart Pepper Middle School, love these middle schoolers, Taylor Baker with a 292, and her runner-up was Mary Aldridge, Western Hills High School in Frankfort. Back with more from the head coach of the championship teams out of Trigg County when we come back here on Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin. Coach Tom Patterson is my guest on the show, and we're talking about NASP Archery, the National Archery in the Schools program, which just held its national championship in Louisville at the Exposition Center, and Coach Patterson's high school team was named national champions. There are some other good counties out there. Anderson County is one, Pulaski County, Meade, Henderson. What are some of your other big competitors out there, you think, Coach?
You've named off the main ones, which Henderson is our neighbor and great friends of ours, and we've competed with them forever and look forward to it. And actually, they shot phenomenal at Nationals. They shot a 34-40. It's great to be able to show off those shoots, and even our archers. There's certain ones on those teams that get rooted for, even though they're kind of our rivals, but they're really not. They're our friends. And like I say, you're rooting for hoping they'll shoot the best, but you still hope that your own individual teams. But individually on each one of those teams, we got people that I support. Young men and young boys come up to me, and I go personally, wish them luck, before they shoot. Even though they're shooting against our archers, I still want them to be able to, have the best day of their life too. What is it about Trigg County, Henderson County, some of these counties we've been talking, what is it that makes them perennial powers as they are? Our standard is that high that when we're performing at our shooting at what we shoot in practice, we take our practice scores anytime and take them straight to a state or national tournament, and I would stand on any one of those scores any day of the week. And Henderson, Meade, Anderson, all those other schools do the same thing. When you get in the hype of the tournament, a lot of times you'll have some that fall off, but your core strength, or like I say, that rock-solid foundation is always there, and it seems to be across the board in this area that we all kind of got the same philosophy. It starts at a young age, and you just got to be consistent in what you're talking about every single time and just build on it and just continue to build. There is a saying out there, and you've heard it, form follows function, and form is paramount. If you're a snow skier, if you play tennis, a golf player, doesn't matter what it is, as long as you do that right, the rewards will follow. And I know the same is very true for archery. Even if they're shooting at a blank target, what do you teach them about proper form? Your placement of your hand, your stature. You got to have that rock-solid foundation. So that is your basis, how you're gripping your string, how deep your finger is into your string, your general attitude of believing in your shot. If you don't believe in your shot, you're kind of wasting your time and my time too, because it's not going to hit, not consistently. You're not going to have the belief that you are going to be that good one day. And then, of course, right after you shoot it, you commit to release and follow through. And then after that, then you've got your reflection. Did I do everything like I was taught? Am I satisfied with the way I did it? And they are to be thinking about certain points in their form. We've got a little thing on the floor in there that I put stickers on the floor. There's no free parking in that building. What I mean by that is when you're on that line, you're always working on some part of your form. You're not just slinging arrows down through there to please me or our coaching staff. You're working on some part of the form individually. It's a precision sport, even down to your breathing and your concentration. That's what you can control. You can't control the breeze. You can't control what the other archers are doing, but you can control your form. There are coaching styles, there are training philosophies, and I'm going to take a wild guess. You take a deck of cards, you line up your archers, and you say, Archer 1, you shoot the 2 of clubs. You sling those cards into the air, and if they don't hit that one card, they are running laps. Now, probably that's over-exaggeration, but there's got to be something that you are doing to bring home these championships. Well, it's like I really have to go back to the very beginning again. It's what we start in the elementary groups, and that discipline of holding your bow right, setting your string fingers, your stance, that whole basic 11 steps. Of course, we modify it a little bit. We may emphasize a point here or a point there a little more or a little less in some areas because we've seen where the benefit is down the road when they get a little older, you know, and everybody in the archery world hates hearing this word, but target panic. You know, anytime you get target panic in archery, it's the end of the world. Their career is over. A lot of times they think, but, you know, you can work a person out of the target panic. It takes a little time and it takes a lot of discipline on their side, but you can actually, you know, have different training things that actually enhances that if you don't watch it through the years. And we've learned that through the years that different things that, you know, we have been doing in the past that enhances that condition. You don't know until they get a little older.
Practice makes perfect. How many days a week do you practice?
2.
And do they practice on their own at home?
Some of them do. We don't encourage a whole lot of that because, you know, you can develop a problem. And it's like spinning your wheels every time they come back to practice. You know, our coaching staff's fixing something. Unsupervised practice is not good.
Practice makes perfect. I think the better way to say that is perfect practice makes perfect, which addresses what you just said, is that if you're going to practice incorrectly, you're not doing yourself or your team any favor. You have to do it right. Get it right. Practice that. And it's good to have the coach saying, make this adjustment, make that adjustment, and you will be practicing correctly. And obviously, your kids are following your lead.
Yeah, and it really is nice because you even see it outside of the archery in the way they present themselves. Because, you know, we've got some young boys at times. You know, and boys will be boys. I was a boy one time, too, like any of us males were. And, you know, you can watch their minds thinking, but they'll hold back. They'll have that discipline. And that's when, you know, I really get excited to know that, you know, where it all will lead to. Because now I know that young man right there is a good chance that, you know, he may actually go through college now and own a business and be a person in the community. I can see the difference in just the discipline that they're seeing, and they're actually applying it at different times. Winning is nice, but you're winning in other areas other than just that score sometimes.
There's going to be a shoot this summer. I think it's in July in South Africa. It's the All Nations shoot. The very best 16 archers from each nation, and we're talking New Zealand, Namibia, Canada, United States, and some others, will gather together in South Africa for a tournament, as well as some service projects. How many students from Trigg County are on the All-American team?
We have 2 of the 16. Can
they make the trip to South Africa?
Yes. It's a trip of a lifetime, you know, as far as for those youngsters and anybody to be able to go to get out and see, and this is going to be, I think, a really neat event. Just as you described, the very first ones, it was in that horse park up there, how they used to come into the Olympic sounds, and they lined up and everything, and all that went along before it got so big, you know, they couldn't manage it that way, but I'm just kind of excited to see what they're going to do over there in relationship to what we do at our nationals and stuff.
Coach Patterson, of course, you have a thriving school there at Trigg County, and you have other teams, football, baseball, basketball. But does your archery team tend to overshadow the other sports?
Yeah, as far as the awards and stuff that we have received in relationship to what the rest of the teams, yeah.
There would have to be a little bit of envy. The thinking is, if I can run faster, if I can jump higher, throw the ball farther, then I'm going to be the better athlete. But in archery, those things really don't apply. It's how well you concentrate.
Correct.
When you come back with a national, state, world championship, if you're the principal of the school, you're in awe. If you're the quarterback on the football team, you have to be still in just utter awe. This is amazing that team can do that.
Yes, and actually I've got quite a few, or we have quite a few, what I call multi-sporters, that I've got some phenomenal baseball players and football players, and they're true athletes. I mean, because they excel in everything. And my youngest daughter, the same way. She's a gymnast. It's just amazing. But to think if they just did archery, what they could do, and just be the master of it, because they would. You know, we've got 2 or 3 of them done this in the past. That, you know, I see them go up and they get in archery and they're coming in there and they're really performing because they've got that discipline because they're true athletes. They can do anything. At
your Kentucky State National and World Championships, I've heard the announcer say, "Thank you for being here," and not just to the student athletes, but to the coaches, to the principal, to other teachers, to their friends, to their parents, to the plethora of people that have helped make archery possible, not just in Kentucky, but pretty much everywhere you look now. And from what I've read and from what I've heard people say and from knowing you, you'll take the criticism when it's warranted, but you also share the glory.
Trigg County is not about one person. Trigg County is about, the staff, the archery staff, the coaching staff that we've had from the conception of NASP with Tina Davis and Mr. Malmer and Mr. Cofield and all the ones that have worked through the years. And I know it's sort of like, you build a car, and the best way to say it, you build a car and you get all the way down and you get somebody who can really put a shiny paint job on it and take it to the show. That's the only person you really know. You don't know what all is behind the scenes.
Tom, you've got a lot to be proud of down there. Now, let me ask you this. This is a question I put to every guest, and if I left you out, I would be accused of playing favorites. Do you text and drive?
No, sir.
That's wonderful, and I hope you impart that to your kids, too. We have been talking to Coach Tom Patterson, coach of the Trigg County Arrowcats, the state champions for elementary, middle, and high school NASP archery teams, as well as the current high school national champions, also the defending world champion high school team. Coach, thanks.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, sir.
We need to take a break, but please stay with us. My name is Charlie Baglin, and this is Kentucky Afield Radio. President of the National Archery in the Schools program, Roy Grimes, has a big grin on his face, and he'll join us this half hour. First, our fishing report.
Hi, this is Eric Cummins with your Southwest Kentucky Fishing Report. Barren River Lake is starting to approach its summer pool levels and should reach that by midweek of the 10th. Some bass are still being caught shallow up in the flooded vegetation on shallow crankbaits, topwaters, and spinnerbaits. Bluegill action has been good on worms, crickets, and waxworms in 2 to 6 foot of water. Crappie action has been most consistent out in your deeper areas in 12 to 15 foot of water near structure or brush piles. At Green River Lake, bass action has been good on top waters early and late with medium crankbaits and Carolina rigs. Crappie action has been best in 10 to 15 foot of water over or near brush piles. As always, good luck and good fishing. Be sure you wear your life jacket.
This is Kevin Fry with your Eastern Area Fisheries Report. Recent fishing has been good throughout the area for catfish. Channel and flathead catfish have been in good numbers, and angler catches at Dewey, Buckhorn, Fish Trap, and Yatesville Lakes. Black bass fishing reports have continued to be good with smallmouth bass on Russell and Leviza Forks in Pike County. Best smallmouth lake fishing would be in Fish Trap Lake. Some nice fish reported at Fish Trap with small crankbaits and short-arm spinnerbaits drug on the bottom. Largemouth bass fishing reports with best numbers of keeper fish have been at Yatesville and Dewey Lakes. Other lakes such as Martin's Fork and Carr Creek Lakes are still producing some keepers, but with better success at night.
Hi everybody, this is Fred Howes with the Northeast Fishing Report. The Cave Run Kids Fishing Derby was held last Saturday at Minor Clark Fish Hatchery, and a new record of 704 kids attending was set. This beat the old record of 504. Now that all you kids and parents are pumped up about fishing, here's what's going on in the Northeast District. Now is a good time to fish for bluegill in farm ponds and smaller reservoirs like Greenbow Lake up in Greenwood County, Mill Creek Lake at Natural Bridge State Park, Clear Creek Lake in Bath County, and Lake Reba in Madison County. Bluegill are on the nest now, and try using ultralight rod and reel combo or a simple cane pole with 2 to 6 pound test line. Bait the hook with night crawlers, redworms, or waxworms, and remember to cover the hook completely with your bait, including the eye of the hook. Stay safe and have fun.
If you want to know what's coming up on Kentucky Afield Radio and Kentucky Afield TV, we cover both programs with one weekly newsletter. It's an email. Sign up. Go to kyafield.com, and at the bottom of the page on the right, you will see the smiling face of Tim Farmer, and you can click that, give us your email address, then once a week you'll be updated on what's coming up on your favorite outdoor shows. Roy Grimes with NASP Archery is next, after the break.
helicopter rescue swimmer Mike Bayersky, United States Coast Guard.
Chances are the Coast Guard wasn't there when you went overboard. But when you wear a Coast Guard-approved life jacket, we're closer than you think. Closer when you jet ski, fish, tube, canoe, kayak. There for close calls, when help isn't close at all.
Kentucky conservation officers remind you your life jacket's got your back. And the backing of the best swimmers everywhere.
In Boyle County are many roads, but one is used to travel back in time more than to anywhere else. Union and Confederate armies marched this road, going to and from the Battle of Perryville. You can Google the old Mackville Road or visit for yourself. And don't be surprised to see Kentucky Nature license plates. Money they raised helps buy and protect this wilderness back road forevermore. Kentucky Nature Plate. No wonder they say nature's finest.
This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin. In this half hour, we are talking to a fellow named Roy Grimes. Roy is the president of the National Archery in the Schools program. The acronym is NASP, N-A-S-P, and you've heard us use that word a lot. It affects students pretty much from 4th grade through high school, all over the state of Kentucky, all over the United States of America, and now scattered countries around the world. In May, in Louisville, Roy, we just had the national championship. That championship saw something like 9,000 and change students coming in. I've had the question posed to me, sir. Why do you not have regional tournaments such as the NCAA basketball championship that is a multi-tiered elimination-style tournament? And by the time you get to Louisville, you're down to either 2 teams or a small core of teams. But what we actually see are thousands upon thousands of kids converging on an arena all at once, competing all at the same time.
I can't speak for all of archery, but in NASP, I can say that when we created the tournament, the culminating event, as educators call it, the state tournament and then the national tournament, we wanted it to be a very showy, high-profile event, one that the kids and their parents and their teachers would be amazed by, that, my goodness, we do this back home with 24 kids or 50 kids, and maybe the school comes over and joins us, and all together we're 100 kids. But then when they show up at, for example, the national tournament, and there are 9,426 exactly this year from 39 states, they're saying, oh my gosh, this is so much bigger than I thought it was. Maybe this is a lot more important and popular than I thought it was. So we designed it that way for maximum impact.
And you've done that. If my name was Jericho Vanoy, who is a Kentucky boy from Madisonville, who shot a .298 and is the top male archer in these United States, mm-hmm. I can say I didn't just beat 63 other competitors. I beat 9,400 and whatever the change is.
Yep.
That I think is where impact comes from.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing he can say is the conditions were the same for everybody. Nobody can say that I was in a better lit gym, that I was in a more quiet gym, that maybe I had officials who were more sensitive to me. We were all together in the same hall at the same time, shooting exactly the same format. Nobody had any different set of circumstances than the other.
That sounds fair.
Mm-hmm.
You have 9,400 student archers at the national tournament just in Louisville. Before that, it was 8,000. It grows every year. Is the reason for that growth simply because more states are entering the fold of NASP?
It's not so much that more states are entering right now, but more states are conducting tournaments. It takes a state a while. Most states don't have their first state tournament in the first year they join NASP. Some states take 2, 3, 4 years. 5 of the states still don't have a state tournament. This year we had 4 more states come to the tournament, the nationals, than we had the year before because they had state tournaments and they declared champions. So number one, that more states are having tournaments, but the biggest reason is almost every state is growing in terms of its number of NASP schools, and that means the state tournaments are growing. I mean, Missouri went from about 800 kids to 1,700 from last year to this year at their state tournament. So those events are increasing, and that's driving more and more student participation at the Nationals, even though we keep raising the qualifying score, and we'll raise it again next year, I'm sure.
What is that qualifying score?
This year, the qualifying score was, I may not quote this exactly right, but it was 3,100 for high schools.
So that's the team score.
Yes.
There's a formula to that the general public probably doesn't follow.
Right. We say if you bring a team 16 to 24, and that's the definition of a NASP team, they'll all shoot. But when they're all finished shooting, we will only compile the top 12 scores from that team, and at least 4 of those have to be of the opposite gender. So there have to be at least 4 boys and 4 girls on the team, and then the rest the other gender. So 12 scores times 300 gives you a possible of 3,600. That's what a team could score. The All-American team, for example, if you took the top 16 scores from our tournament, which we did, their score would be 3,552, which means the average of their 12 top shooters on the All-American team was 296. And that's amazing.
That's amazing.
Because that was a national record for years. You know.
The archery is scored very much like bowling. 300 is a perfect game. So just so you know, then a 296 is pretty close to perfection.
Yeah.
So that's the qualifying score. If you have at least 3,100, then that is your qualifying. And we were talking about more kids, more teams were qualifying, and despite the fact you were raising the qualifying score. So it's anticipated that next year they'll have to do better than 3,100?
Yeah, we'll probably raise the qualifying score another 100 or 200 points. And of course, it's a little lower for middle school, and it's a little lower yet for elementary. But even the elementary kids are shooting 3,000 scores in order to get to the Nationals and then move on to the World Tournament. Another reason why because it's a big showy event and because it gets a lot of publicity, more and more kids want to be part of it. And to many of these kids now, it's no longer the NASP Nationals, it's going to Louisville.
I'm a part of your tournament, and you may have heard me say, welcome to Kentucky. Every athlete has a goal. If you're in tennis, you want Wimbledon. You want to play at the Masters. If you golf, if you're a baseball player, you're going to the World Series. But if you are in NASP archery, you want to go to Kentucky. I was watching Roy on YouTube one day. I was out there fiddling around, and I put in the word NASP. And up came all kinds of videos. And I remember one from Palatka, Florida. There was a team on their middle school team, and the kid on the video was so excited. He said, my score is good enough, I'm going to Kentucky. And you may have heard me say at your tournaments, welcome to Kentucky. Sure, Kentucky is the name of our state, but Kentucky is home of the national championship. And I got thinking, he's going to Kentucky. He's not going to Louisville.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to pronounce Louisville.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But he knows how to say Kentucky.
Yeah.
And so I started saying, welcome to Kentucky, because that is the Mecca, is what you're saying. Have you heard kids say, I'm going to Louisville?
I've heard some say that, but, now that I think about it, more of them probably do refer to Kentucky, because they don't know what to do with that silent S in Louisville. And just imagine if we moved the world to Des Moines, Iowa.
Oh, my. You talked that Ryan Long and several other kids had made it to the All-American team. What is the National Archery in the Schools program All-American team?
We just started this last year. The Army National Guard here in Kentucky is one of the national sponsors of NASP, and they were looking for some ways to get some exposure to their organization. So we suggested that we designate an All-American team of the top 16 boys and girls at the conclusion of our national tournament. No matter what you came in, you may have come in 50th in the nation or 100th, but if you're in the top 16 at the end of our national tournament, you are placed on the All-American team. Canada has an All-Canada team. Several countries in Africa have their All-Nation teams. Those 16 youngsters, last year we designated for the first time. And then we contacted all of them. We said, what if next year you make the All-American team? If we had a tournament for the All-Nation teams everywhere in Africa, would you be interested in going? 15 out of the 16 said that they would. Well, that's the reality now. The 16 All-Americans this year were given a flyer at the as part of the awards ceremony, and 9 of their parents have called me back in 2 days and said they're going to Africa, where we expect at least 3 more probably. We're going to have 12 to 16 of these All-Americans, plus their parents or other chaperones are going to go with us the last week of July to South Africa, and they'll be joined by all Canada and some African teams. Maybe Mongolia is going to send a team. For 1 day in Johannesburg, South Africa, they're going to teach students young people at an orphanage how to shoot bows and arrows. Then we're going to put them on a bus and we're going to drive them north towards the equator, about 2 hours to an African wildlife lodge, chalets and cabins and big lodge, and they're going to do a service project with young people in that area of Africa. And then for 2 days, they're going to compete. They're going to shoot exactly the same equipment and format that they shot in Louisville, but they're going to do it over a period of 2 days. And we're going to create brackets and have a round robin, winner's bracket, loser bracket, make sure every child gets to shoot at least 3 to 5 NASP flights by the time the 2-day competition's over. And we will have an all-world, all-star champion team as a result of that. And the kids are fired up.
You realize what you're doing for these kids is essentially what the Archery of the Schools program set out to do back in whatever it was, 2000, 2001, that we want to talk about more than just archery, but the history of it, the culture of it, the curriculum of archery. It's not just pulling back the bowstring and shooting an arrow.
Oh, yeah.
And now you are going to South Africa with kids from all over the nation, and you're working with kids in orphanages.
Yeah. Yeah, we want them to get to experience that there is a lot more than archery going on around them, and let them see that and witness that and help that, and who knows, maybe we'll change a life or two in the process.
I think you're going to change a life or two in the process this summer.
Yeah.
If not dozens of lives in the process. If I were Roy Grimes, I would have to sit back and say, man, we've come a long way here.
Well, I'm proud of this Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources for having the idea for it to come from this agency back in 2001, and then to put it together, and for our commission here in Kentucky to say, hey, we think this is a good idea and we'll help make it happen. And then some in the archery industry that joined us, like Matthews Archery in Easton and Morrell Targets, those folks took a lot of people to put this together. But now the people that get the work done, they're the 30-some thousand teachers who present these archery lessons to students in their schools. That's who they are. They are the front and center folks in the NASP.
Roy, we're against the clock. We need to take a break. But when we come back, I want to get your thoughts on the next World Championship. I know it's been in Florida, Disney World, for the last few years. Now moving to the wonderful city of St. Louis. More when we come back. I'm Charlie Baglin with Roy Grimes here on Kentucky Afield Radio. Back in our final segment on Kentucky Afield, my name's Charlie Baglin, talking with Mr. Roy Grimes. And if you're in NASP Archery, you have a student who is, then you have heard that name. He is the president of the National Archery in the Schools program. You have a world championship coming up in St. Louis, Missouri.
At the America Center.
And that's where St. Louis Rams play football. Yep. That's going to be quite the venue.
Yeah, and you can tell how naive I am, Charlie. You know, I went there to inspect the facility, and I was already worried about how we're going to find arrows on the grass. And I walk into the dome, and it looks just like the convention center downtown in Louisville. It's a concrete floor. It doesn't look like a football field at all until they play football.
I sit here, and I'm only concerned about, do they have a good public address system? Right. I'm betting you they do.
Yeah, I bet you they do.
You have moved it from Disney World, Florida, which was quite the international destination.
4 years there.
And in St. Louis, you've gone there for a reason. What was the thinking behind moving to central of the United States?
When the World was in Orlando, the World event grew from 600 to 1,300 kids over a 4-year period. That is way too slow a growth. That's way too small a crowd. And what that means to us is it means there are hundreds and thousands of kids that don't get to participate in the World because it's too far out on the edge of the U.S., for example. Orlando is an expensive destination. So we had decided after 4 years there were too many kids missing this that could come and that would enjoy it. Now, the ones who went, love it, and some were disappointed we moved it because it was a family vacation every year, and they liked it. They would have liked us to keep it there. And we did a survey of all of our coaches and asked, what do you think about, and the majority, over half those who responded, said they would like to see us move this World Tournament to the middle of the country in the middle of the summer. The World used to be in October. So we set out to, that's why we're moving it to St. Louis, and already we're hearing that our participation is likely to be 3 times higher than it was in Orlando. And Charlie, that means more than 2,000 more kids and their families are going to be able to say, I went to the World Championship.
There's going to come a day, and I don't know when that day will be, that if it truly is a World Championship, it's going to have to take place somewhere else in the world.
People have asked us that, and especially Canada. They wonder if we'd ever move it to Toronto. Of course, Toronto, they're not in the program right now, but Vancouver, BC, or up in Edmonton, Alberta. And what we always tell them is the World Tournament needs to be in the vicinity of the most NASP kids. And still, the most NASP kids is going to be the center of the U.S., the Midwest, the Southeast. That's the real concentration of NASP kids in schools. And I think that's going to be the center of our universe for many, many more years. Now, some would argue, well, if you'd move it to Vancouver, or you'd move it to Seattle, or move it to Johannesburg, you'd get more people in that country, in those provinces, fired up, and NASP would grow there. We don't really believe that would be that moving our tournament there would be enough stimulus to cause all the people that would have to travel so far to make it worth the effort. So I believe we'll be able to justify having the tournament in the middle of the United States for many more years. We are looking, for example, in 2014, that it may move to Madison, Wisconsin, or Des Moines, Iowa, because we may not be able to get St. Louis 2 years in a row.
Roy, let me ask you a question that I swore that I would ask you the next time I got you behind a microphone, and it speaks to the safety aspect of NASP. A friend of mine asked me, archery or school kids, really? How do you keep them from shooting each other? And I simply looked at him, and I don't know that he really wanted to believe me, but I said, well, 47 states, thriving school systems, all these years in the business, it hasn't happened yet. And I likened it to Little League. Those kids don't take ball bats and club each other over the head. These kids have a level of discipline. But while we have a minute, would you speak to the aspect of safety?
Well, when NASP was established, archery was already one of the safest activities that could be done in a school. So we didn't make archery a safe sport. It was already safe, but we've kept it that way. The lines on the floor of the gymnasium where the kids go when they're given certain whistle signals, those lines and those whistle signals establish a certain discipline. In archery class, for some of these students, they've never had that much discipline. They've never been told by a whistle where to be and when to be there and what to do when they get there. But in order to participate in archery class, they have to do those things. Every 2 minutes, they'll have to do these things all over again. By the time they get to tournaments, I mean, the people at Disney, they were astounded. They would come up to us and they say, of all the 175,000 athletes that come down here every year, yours are the best behaved. Well, it's not that our kids are any different or better than other kids. It's that they've been used to following whistle commands and lines on the floor to participate in their activity, and they do it down there at Disney and at our national tournament. They're well under self-control.
If anybody wanted to become part of this in some way, is that possible?
Yeah, Charlie. 11 years. We're going into our 12th year now. We started NASP on March 3rd, 2002 in 21 Kentucky schools, and we added a 22nd later that summer. If anybody wanted to help us, we're a nonprofit, and the number one obstacle for a school starting NASP and bringing archery to, on average, 118 students per school, the number one obstacle is money to buy the equipment kit. The equipment kit, even at wholesale prices, is $3,000 for a school. We have a national equipment grant program every year where we're able to gather money from Easton Foundations, from Matthews, from Morrell Targets, from some other supporters to provide some grants. But we're only able to provide grants for about 6 or 7 schools per state, and we're growing by 1,600 schools per year. We could double that growth if we had more support for the National Equipment Grant Program. So if folks wanted to go to NASParchery.com, our website, and donate to help us increase that equipment grant, that will provide more kids the ability to experience all we've been talking about.
And Roy, I think it's important to point out that this is a bona fide part of curriculum. This isn't an after-school program.
Charlie, the reason we established the protocol of you must teach archery during the school day in order to be a NASP school, that was an archery purpose. We wanted to make sure we weren't preaching to the choir by being an after-school only program. But the spin-off of that is that educators have turned this archery program into an education program. They use archery, like you mentioned before, as a carrot to get these kids to behave better, to have better attitudes, to pay more attention.
And it works.
And it works. There have been 3 surveys done about this program, 2 by a company in Virginia and 1 by the University of Florida, and every time teachers say in large numbers, these numbers are 75 to 80% of the teachers say the kids are better motivated, better listeners, better observers, they pay more attention, their attendance is improved on archery days, all the things an educator would just die for. They're getting it through archery.
Roy, congratulations. Keep up the good work, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Charlie, and thanks for your help.
You are most welcome. Listen, any of our shows that you have missed or you want to hear again, go to myhuntingandfishing.com. You can also search Kentucky Afield Radio on iTunes and on YouTube. I'm Charlie Baglin. Join us again in a week and we will go inside, outdoors, again, right here on Kentucky Afield Radio.